In this video, we are going to make this Japanese forest scene in Unreal Engine 5. So by the end of the video, you'll have something that looks like this. Now I'm using Unreal Engine 5.4, and the first thing that you need to do is enable the HDR plugin. So go to plugins and enable the HDR Backdrop plugin. After that, you can add a HDRI Backdrop. And now you need to set the HDRI asset. And we are going to use this one for this Japanese forest environment. Now we are going to configure the HDR settings later on. But first, let's add a post-process volume. Here we are going to enable infinite extents. That's going to make sure that all the post-process settings are applied to the whole level. After that, we are going to search for exposure. So we are going to set the min and the max value to a constant number. You can also enable local exposure. Okay, back to the HDR backdrop. We are going to change some of these settings. So we are going to set the intensity to 1000 units. And we're going to set the size of this HDRI to about 2000 units. Now in the HDRI, we also have a skylight object. So you can select the skylight and make sure that the skylight is using the same HDRI as the HDR backdrop. And that way your indirect lighting is going to match, and this is really important for Lumen. I'm also going to set the intensity to about 400 units. Now finally, to complete our lighting setup, we are going to add a direction light. We are going to set the intensity of the direction light to about 400 units. You can also enable the temperature option here. Using the temperature option, you can basically decide how cooler or warmer your scene is. Make sure that your direction light is set to movable. This is really important for Lumen. Next, we are going to add some fog in the level. So we are going to add an exponential height fog object, and right here you can enable volumetric fog. So our lighting looks pretty good, and now let's start by creating our environment. So for the environment itself, we are going to start with the ground plane. So we're going to add a plane and we are going to scale it up and give it a ground material. So this is a forest ground material from the Quixel Megascan assets. So these are the assets that are going to be used in this environment. So make sure that you download the starter project. Link is in the description. You can download it for free. So let's start by arranging these assets. We're going to start with the gate, and we're going to move this somewhat like this. After that, let's place our foliage assets. So I'm just going to create a pathway in between the bamboo forest. Make sure that you spend a lot of time in this process. It's really fun. And the more time you spend in placing these assets, the better your environment is going to look. As you can see, I'm going back and forth, changing the rotation of the HDR backdrop and the lighting as well. Now in the final version of this, I also replaced the flat ground with a displaced version. And that's also included in the starter project. Here I'm placing some rock assets to basically break up the repetition in the ground texture. And again, if you wanted to go next level, you could always use virtual textures and height field mesh. And using RVTs and mesh blending is going to take this environment to the next level. Now here again, I'm going to go back to the volumetric fog and change the settings there. And in the end, I was not happy with the default fog that comes with Unreal Engine. So I decided to basically ditch that and use the Easy Fog add-on So it's made by William Foucher, and I'll leave a link to that as well. You can check that out. Now at this point, I'm going to add my cinematic camera. So at this point, we have established our shot. So we are going to hop back in the post-process volume. And here we are going to do some post-processing. Now let's go ahead and create a basic camera animation. So we are going to create a level sequence. We are going to add our camera. So we are going to do a simple keyframe animation. And again, I've made videos on this. So if you want to learn more about animation, I'll leave links to that as well. After you have made your animation, let's render this out. Now at this point, you need to go to plugins and search for the movie render queue. Make sure that you enable that. After that, you can go to cinematics, movie render queue, and here you can add your sequence. And again, I've made a dedicated video on the movie render queue, and I'm going to put a link to that right there. We are going to click on the settings here, and we are going to choose this render preset. This render preset is included in the starter project. Now you can go to the output and you can choose where you want to save this file. And when everything looks good, you can render this animation. So the render is done. You're going to get a bunch of images. And now basically you have to take those images and convert it to a video file. So I'm going to open DaVinci Resolve here, and we are going to import all these images. And here we can further do some post-processing, add some sound effects, and render this out. And that is it. So that was the whole process from start to finish. If you guys like this video, leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Check out my Patreon page. That's it. I'm gonna see you in the next video.